it's a new initiative that we are working on this year. So we are sort of like a traditional boot camp. We're starting to do more like Freeman courses, and hopefully that's helpful for all the learners as well. So right now we have Python SQL. You can click on the link to access that, but it does require email registration, and then it takes you to our internal learning platform. We have some open workshops. So these are the workshops where we invite some speakers or our instructors to teach a very practical topic. You can get access to those recordings and material as well. Next week, we will start a series of data science talks. So we're working with a company called InfluxDB. So they are a database technology company that focuses on time series data analysis. So there will be 4 talks. You should be able to find this information on WeCloud Open, or if you found out about us through meetups, you should be able to find those events posted pretty soon. So those are really good topics because they will be talking about how to do time series data analysis, fraud detection, anomaly detection using for time series data, and also how to deploy models and things like that. So feel free to join. It will be every Monday in May and June. Okay. And if you happen to be just getting started with data science, I highly recommend you read our career guide. So we have how to become a data scientist, BI analyst, and data engineer, DevOps engineer career guide. So that will give you some detailed information. I don't think we have time to go through all of these in detail today, but if you would like to, for example, know the learning path, we have very detailed explanation on how to get started, the things you need to learn. So I'll leave it to you to read them, okay? And I can share these links with you. And if you'd like to stay in touch, we have a Discord channel, yeah, you can join, and we make some announcement there, and you can ask questions as well. So yeah, this hopefully these are useful information. And let's get started with the talk. Let me share my slides. All right. First of all, a quick introduction to data science. There are different types of data scientists. We break them into 2 different categories: operational data scientists, machine learning researchers, ML engineers, and data science product owners or product managers. I think most of the data scientists, they work in business teams, right? So some companies, data science actually belongs to the technology group. They may have center of excellence. So data scientists sort of work in a centralized environment, and they're like the internal consulting teams, right? But in many companies, right, data scientists work in functional teams. They're integrated into marketing, sales, right, compliance, risk, or personalization. So these are what we call operational data scientists. And to work as a data scientist, I think operational data scientists need to be very good with SQL data preparation, because data is usually very big. It doesn't really fit exactly onto your computer. So you need to be comfortable writing queries to extract and prepare data. And need to be able to visualize data, and then train machine learning models. I think that's a must-have nowadays for data scientists, or in some organization, they call that predictive modeling, right? It's not necessarily computer vision, natural language processing, but you're doing predictive analytics to help a company to do better, decision making, either save cost or drive more revenue through data science and analytics. And business communication is very important for operational data scientists. Imagine you work as a data scientist in a marketing team, then after you train a customer churn model, the business team will definitely ask you to explain the model to them and tell them how they can take actions on the model. So they'll ask you to give them the important variables, right? And they need to do some sort of profiling. So understanding the business and how the business teams are going to use your model is very important. So that requires a lot of communication. The second type of data scientist, the job title may not be data scientist. It depends on the company you work for, but they're called, ML researchers, right? So these are the folks who focus on creating machine learning algorithms. They may not directly work with scikit-learn. They can come up with new algorithm, do literature research. So they need to have very strong computer science and mathematics background, and they need to be able to code and build prototypes as well. There are not a ton of jobs like that out there. It's mainly for big companies. I think if they have a research team, I think for most of the startups, banks and retailers, why they need data scientists, is because they want someone to help them drive business intelligence, predictive modeling, so they can take actions on it. So it's very applied, science instead of research. And then the third type of data scientists are machine learning engineers. I'm going to just do a quick, search on Indeed and LinkedIn, in a few minutes, just to show you the demand. There's still a lot of data scientist jobs out there, and ML engineering is definitely on the rise because a lot of companies realize that they not only need data scientists who can build predictive models, but maybe the purpose is not just for marketing, for sales, it's actually for building data products. So the data science or machine learning models will need to be integrated into their product solutions or whatever services they're building. The ML engineers will need to have the data science knowledge and skills, but they also need to have strong engineering and DevOps skills. So they need to know basically a little bit of everything. They don't live in a very pure Jupyter Notebook environment. They need to be comfortable with, Git, version control, right, unit testing, and also working with different platforms and infrastructure. It's becoming more and more popular, and the demand is certainly increasing as well. The fourth type of data scientist is what we call the data scientist product managers. We work with a lot of students, after they got trained in the data science bootcamp, they'll realize that they actually enjoy, building something that's interesting and fun. It's not necessarily always going to be data analysis. And these are the folks who have, really strong business knowledge, or they have ownership, so for example, they come from a traditional project management or product management background, and now they're, learning the technical skills, and they would like to apply that to product management. I found that very interesting, and certainly fits a lot of people's, desire. So this is definitely a good direction to go. I've worked with data scientists and even data science leaders who later on transition into some sort of product role, and could be the next step for anyone who's working a technical data science role. There's always confusion around data science and the type of skills you need to learn. And of course, when people talk about data science, machine learning is always very important, and probably the first thing that came to mind. But I just want to, let everyone know that machine learning is, only just part of the responsibility of a data scientist. And data scientist, data actually comes before scientists, right? Some people will argue data scientists are not real scientists, right? It depends on how you interpret that. But I think data scientists, spend a lot of time with data, and that part, gaining intuition about the data and business problem, is what makes a good data scientist. If all you learn and do is just writing code, I think, or you enjoy doing that, maybe ML engineer is a better fit. But I think if you want to become a very good data scientist, you absolutely need to know business and need to be able to communicate and understand, because ultimately I think data science is supporting business decision making. So you need to be very good at data. That means not only Python, you need to be good at SQL. You need to be able to roll up your sleeves and just build some Tableau dashboard as well, even though that's not the primary focus of a data scientist. But if it's required by the business, and just got to do it. So be ready to to wear multiple hats and be very flexible and just keep learning new things. I think that's what a good data scientist need to be able to do. And in terms of the skill set, you must have seen this Venn diagram many times. in general, data scientists will need to be able to write some code, right? They don't need to be professional level, computer scientist or coming from a software engineering background, because there are a lot of data scientists that are self-trained, or they graduate from a data science, certificate program or boot camps, typical career switchers. But still, like, being able to code and code well is very important. So Python is something we strongly recommend, but you can learn R as well. R is a beautiful language. Different companies has different choices of tools, but I think in the industry, Python is relatively more popular than R. But I've seen data science shops that purely use R as well, so they have strong advocate for R language. I personally would recommend Python's, simply because there are more jobs, Python-related data scientist jobs in the market. Linux operating system, these are, I think, things that are nice to know, especially when data scientists start to work with, a little bit closer with infrastructure such as AWS, Docker. When it comes to model deployment, you need to understand command line as well. So it's something really that will be very, very helpful for data scientists, and learn big data platforms such as Apache Spark. That will be very useful, because I'll show you some statistics. A lot of data scientist jobs actually require the knowledge and skills of big data, such as Apache Spark. Data scientists, of course, need to know mathematics and machine learning. So you need to know the basics of statistics, linear algebra, some calculus. But I think when it comes to calculus and linear algebra, it's more about the understanding of the mechanics behind some of these machine learning models, how it's trained, optimized. When you actually do your day-to-day work, you're not going to touch on linear algebra and mathematics a lot, because a lot of times you're just working with packages, and being able to munge and manipulate data and follow the right workflow is probably more important. And there are a lot of parameter tunings, stuff you can do. But having stronger mathematics foundation is absolutely important. But that, it doesn't hurt you, much if you are not coming from a statistics background, because a lot of these machine learning algorithms are very practical. If you understand the high level, if you have very strong intuition about how it works, the main point is how to apply these algorithms to your data problem. I think gaining practical experience with training machine learning models is more important than the math equations itself. Okay, but at the beginning of your learning journey, absolutely you need to know the math behind data science. And storytelling is also very important. I found that data scientists, especially after you become a senior data scientist and data science team lead or manager, you will be spending more time dealing with stakeholders, because ultimately a company is hiring a data science team in the hope that they can help discover new patterns, interesting insights from the data they have. So it's important for the data science team to communicate those insights back to the business, right? So you need to be able to do very comfortable with presentation, building slides and explaining things to people. It's not always going to be very formal, but you're going to get a lot of questions from the business through Slack, Teams or emails. Just explaining things to people, because when they make day-to-day decisions, on marketing campaigns, right, or working with CRM and the sales team, they always need some sort of insight, and that's why working as a data scientist, you need to sort of expect to do a lot of ad hoc data analysis to address their business questions. Some of these could be, data analytics. Some of these will be machine learning, and then explaining the models to people, because if you can't help the business understand how the models work, like how to use the model, they won't have enough confidence to apply your model. And in some companies, like the traditional businesses, data science is some sort of like automation. It may like people are sort of worried that your models are going to take away their jobs. So you'll get pushbacks as well. So how do you convince people, and how do you convince people that it's actually making their lives easier by applying these, predictive models? That requires strong communication and expectation management skills. And data scientists need to understand change management as well, but it depends on the teams you work in, I guess. Just to give a little bit more details from a coding perspective, I think you need to know, at least the basics of Linux command, Python programming, or definitely understand how databases work, how entity relationships work, know how to join and merge tables and do aggregations through SQL. Get comfortable with version control. It's not a must-have for a lot of the data science teams because they are still working mainly with Jupyter notebooks, or some data science team work with GUI-based tools like drag and drop type of workflow tools. So you don't have to write a lot of code, but knowing version control is still very important, especially when you work for tech companies. Being able to version control is very important. When it comes to tools and platforms, learn at least one of these, right? AWS, Azure, or GCP, cloud platforms. I would highly recommend Amazon Web Services, but I think in the US there are more AWS jobs. Recently we did some data collection, and it looks like in Canada there are actually more Azure jobs. Yeah, that was interesting. And big data tools. And I would probably focus on Apache Spark and gain a basic understanding of Hadoop and MapReduce. It's more like a legacy systems now. So, but Spark is a very important skill to have. When you work for companies like EdTech company, I don't think your Python models are going to run at all. You definitely wanted to work with big data tools like Apache Spark, or some very powerful data warehouse tools that allows you to query billions and billions of records. I think data scientists need to understand a little bit about containerization as well. So specifically, how to work with Docker, because when you do experimentation, learn some new things, the tools are usually available through a Docker container. So it's easier for you to work with Docker, and then when you want to deploy your machine learning models, using Docker will help you make your ML pipelines more portable, and so the production environment can actually take advantage of the models you have built. When it comes to machine learning, I'm just going to list some of the popular packages here, for math and statistics or linear algebra, NumPy in the Python ecosystem, SciPy, the scientific packages, and data exploration, right, using pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, Plotly. These are some of the popular visualization libraries in Python. Pandas has profiling and visualization capability as well, which is based on Matplotlib. And when it comes to machine learning, I think most people will start their Python machine learning journey with scikit-learn, and then use pandas, and scikit-learn for feature engineering preparation. When the data is big, try Apache Spark. And data scientists will definitely need to know the basics of neural networks and deep learning. When it comes to deep learning, you sort of need to get specialized, right? Either in computer vision, large or natural language processing. But neural networks should always be part of the data scientist toolbox, which is using PyTorch and TensorFlow to train machine learning models. It's not always going to beat your random forest or some of those classical machine learning algorithms when it comes to structured data, but it's definitely something you need to try in your portfolio project, for example. And learning a little bit about embeddings will be very helpful. For example, in ad tech, you're probably going to to build user embeddings, or embeddings about the products or the ads. So in that case, you'll be training deep learning models, but you're not necessarily doing computer vision or natural language processing. But embedding is quite powerful techniques that can be used for personalization, for nearest neighbor search problems, and building lookalike models, things like that. Um, and I strongly recommend, people learn, a little bit about the classical natural language processing, techniques. I know large language models and ChatGPT are very hot right now. But some of the traditional NLP techniques are still very useful, especially when it comes to text pre-processing, right? How to deal with textual data in general, how to do topic modeling, text clustering, doing sentiment analysis. There's some good packages out there, such as Jensen, right? Spacey. You can train topic models using that, Word2Vec. It doesn't always have to involve, large language models, because the cost of dealing with those models are also very high. It really depends on the goal here, because a lot of time data scientists are working on analytics, right? You're explaining the models to people, not necessarily building some sort of deep learning or NLP products. But if your goal is to build product, then you do want to apply very advanced models to make sure it's a good product. On the storytelling side, you need to be comfortable with, I would say at the very least, Excel. A lot of people get surprised when I tell them they need to be good at Excel. Well, it depends on who you're dealing with. A lot of the business users, they're Google Sheet, Excel users, and I would say most of them. So the cost of building and maintaining a Tableau and Power BI, dashboard can actually be quite high. Like, you not only need to build it and build the data models, and you need to sort of, and maintain that, right? And need to train the business people to be, teams to be self-sufficient, right? But a lot of times they have ad hoc questions. It's not worth your effort to build a Tableau dashboard. They just have a bunch of business questions. And if you can analyze the data using Python notebooks and export some of the data and do visualization in Excel, if it gets your work done, Excel is the best tool. And now maybe you can just, use Excel with ChatGPT. I don't know. It's going to make your life so much easier. But you definitely don't expect to send your Jupyter notebook to the business team, because they don't even know how to open it, right? And you certainly don't expect an executive to sort of, install like Anaconda on their laptop. So Excel is still one of the most popular tools you're going to deal with for ad hoc analysis. Okay. And presentation tools, PowerPoint, there are a lot of great presentation tools. You don't have to stick with PowerPoint. There are some AI presentation tools that are pretty fancy nowadays. Whatever works for you and your team. And to be able to tell a good story, I mean, a data scientist will definitely need to understand the business, right? How would you be able to tell a good, story if you don't understand what the business, need? So I think you need to understand different use cases. If you work in certain industries, you definitely want to spend time just learning more about that industry, the data science and machine learning challenges and problems in that industry. And it would be great if you get the opportunity to work on a few different machine learning problems in that industry. Then you will become the subject matter expert, and always learn how to explain things in layman's term, to the business team. So these are data science skills, and of course, I think ChatGPT, like technology, DALL-E, and some other, cool technologies are taking the world by storm right now. And there are a lot of projections and forecasts saying that it's going to take, well, in this case, it says impact a lot of jobs. I totally agree. It's already impacting a lot of jobs, because even internally, we are using ChatGPT to ask ChatGPT questions. And sometimes if we don't have the time, and then we just leverage ChatGPT to get started with some code, right? So it's very powerful technology, and there's a lot of debate about ChatGPT, and some companies or even countries starting to ban it. I would like to hear your take on this. Whether you are just getting started with your data science journey, or maybe you work in industry as a data scientist for years. Maybe you're coming from a software engineering background. Now you're considering AI and data science. I would like to open up the floor and hear, your ideas and your thought on ChatGPT or AI technologies in general. Are you afraid of, your jobs getting taken away, or do you think it will sort of, take take away data scientist jobs? What is your take? I would love to hear some discussion here. So I'll pause here and see if you have any comments, and feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. I'm Dushyant Tyagi. I'm a machine learning student at Georgetown College
Cool.
here in Toronto. First of all, regarding the ChatGPT, I think as the as the field is developing, so will be the business requirements as the LangChain and alikes are coming, which are more and more customizing as per the businesses. So I'm still optimistic about that. That uh, and I have a question as a data science student. There's always a question, since you have limited time studying data science, there's always a question whether to. So some foundations are given, the basic machine learning models, your regressions, your decision trees. But when you start when you're data science and you want to think about the machine learning and deep learning topics which you want to learn more, there's always a confusion whether to take NLP or computer vision or audio, which can be which could be more integrated into, or which could be more effective if integrated along with data science, your legacy data science skills for a job search perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I wouldn't consider whatever data science skills you have right now, as obsolete or legacy, skills, because what's popular out there right now are something called large language models, but not all business problems involve natural language processing. And if you look at the data science jobs out there, especially the jobs in e-commerce, in retail, in supply chain, and banking, I don't know, telecom. A lot of these jobs are, require data scientists to deal with structured data. So I don't think, the large language models is going to replace what you're doing as a data scientist right now. So in that sense, like when you actually look at all the job descriptions out there, I think, the classical, tools you work with, they're still going to stay there, and it's still very important. You don't throw a large language model at every problem that you encounter. But I think, tools like ChatGPT can definitely make your work a lot more efficient. But I think a lot of companies' concern is that, do they allow the employees to leverage this kind of tools, right? Because it's more like a public tool. So a lot of companies already banned ChatGPT. But I think what's more interesting is, if you would like to invest time in natural language processing, then you definitely, a lot of companies, even though they ban ChatGPT because they don't want to upload their employees to upload their data to the cloud or to Microsoft, whatever ChatGPT server, they still want to build that technology internally. And that's why you're seeing a lot of AI startups nowadays focusing on large language models, doing some innovation, because I think applying these technologies to your subject, matter data set, whether it's an insurance company or ed tech company, I think that would be more interesting. And ChatGPT is successful because it sort of scraped the entire web. I wonder how much private data they can have access to. It's something that's very interesting to watch and see if there will be some sort of open standard where people contribute their data to this kind of algorithms. But I think right now a lot of companies have fears of sharing their data, and that's why they don't allow their internal employees to use it, especially the data about your customers, right? Because the company, even though they sort of store those data, it's still like something up to debate, like who owns the customer data. So a lot of companies consider that as a business advantage as well. So yeah, that it will be interesting, I think. But I think as a student who's going through, a master's or whatever college program, at this stage, because you're graduating soon, I wouldn't worry too much about like all the generative AI stuff. I think these algorithms will have a lot of great applications, but if you look at the job opportunities out there, most of them are not related to these yet. I don't know how fast this field is going to evolve, but I think if you want to get a data scientist job, the demand is still very, very strong. But the way we work with these technologies will definitely change. And maybe everyone will need to learn how to get better at doing prompt engineering stuff. But as I said at the beginning, I think the most important job of a data scientist is not to write that 10 lines of code to fit a model. And it's really just, that part should be automated. And that's why there are a lot of auto ML tools out there already. There are GUI-based tools, so you can write less code. But that doesn't take away data scientist jobs.
So can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the answer for the first question. One more question I have is, will it be better to have ML ops skills? Because if you have if you have good business domain skills and good ML skills, will it be better to adapt to the ever improving data science market?
Yeah, so machine learning, ML ops, they are the new trends, I would say, right? But they're a more advanced version of data science, I would say. So it requires more advanced skills and experiences. So if you're a new grad, it will be relatively harder to get ML ops jobs or ML engineer jobs, because I'll show you some statistics, in terms of the average number of years of experience required for ML engineer job, it's much higher than the requirement for a data science job. So there are still more junior jobs in data science. And most of the companies, when they hire ML engineers or ML ops, they want people it's like the companies are just getting started thinking about deploying their models into production. They're not going to hire junior people. They want people who have the experience, who have deployed models in the past. And that's why they ask for an average of 3 to 5 years of experience. But in the long term, it is absolutely the skills you need to have, because I think with, as I said, but this is just my 2 cents. With tools like ChatGPT, because a lot of companies don't want their employees to upload their sensitive data, they want to build their internal version. I know banks, I have friends working for banks, they're building that. So that's going to just increase the demand for ML engineers. It's not people just so maybe they don't need people to train like a new or invent a new GPT-3, 3.5 version, because they can just leverage that. But they need people who know how to work with these tools to do fine tunings. But most importantly, they are thinking about building chat applications for banks, for different industries. Then you need engineers who can build applications, right? I'm not just talking about software engineers or backend engineers. It's engineers who understand AI, data science, and who can actually also deploy things in production. It could be 2 different people, working together, but it could also be a new demand for people who have mixed skills. I think that's maybe where the trend is going to be.
So I have a question. I am an astrophysics professor who's trying to transition to data science in industry. And I'm facing this difficulty that a lot of employers are just not considering me because of lack of experience. And, many of the things you described here, like doing ad hoc calculations and explaining things to stakeholders in an easy way. Many of those are my strong points, but some of the employers are saying that we just want, these young students, they can run the machine learning programs, and that's all we need. Whereas I can understand what's going on behind and interpret things when if it gives a wrong answer, kind of look behind the scenes. How can I, market myself? How can I make employers understand the value of my skill?
Yeah, this is a really great question. We got this very often as well. I agree with you. You know, for career switchers, I don't know when you talk to those hiring companies, but in the last few months, or maybe like just last year, the job market was pretty tough because of the tech layoffs, and so I think the market will take some time to absorb all of those top talents, and because of the high interest rate and all the uncertainty, there are more like hiring freezes. But even though we noticed that recently the job market is getting better, we start to see more data jobs for sure, because our students are getting more interviews compared to, like, I think January and February were pretty tough. So yeah, so I think it depends on the time, I guess, but a lot of employers right now are looking for senior or someone who are actually more experienced. So I wouldn't say that the new graduates have an advantage. As far as I know, one of the schools, like top schools here, that we know, like a lot of students couldn't get internships, and even if they do that for free, there are not a lot of opportunities. Maybe it's just because the market is not very good, but it's definitely getting better, I would say. And in terms of experience, and how to stand out, it's a tough problem. I think we also need to think about this from a hiring companies perspective. One thing I slightly disagree is that I actually do think that people who who like you will have a good you have your advantage. Maybe it's just the way you write resume, or you showcase your experience, because a lot of the hiring companies I talk to, they actually prefer to work with experienced candidate, and they've hired new grads who are very skilled, but because they lack the practical work experience, they can do junior position, but it will take 1 to 2 years or 3 years for them to develop into a senior data scientist. So it really depends on the type of data scientist they are hiring. We've worked with candidates who come from or students who come from, like, project management background, who has never done coding before, but actually they are the students who are more likely to get like managers and directly get a senior data scientist job, because of their past experience in project management or business leadership. So yeah, you have your advantage, I think, and it's just a matter of how to convince people that you can get the job done, and that takes a lot of effort, I would say, for career switchers, because the market is very competitive. Everyone has strong skill set on their resume. On paper, like, people can always add keywords. And so when you look at this from a hiring manager's perspective, it's also sometimes like tough for the hiring managers to decide or tell who is better, because sometimes you just wouldn't be able to tell who's better. Like, some folks are just better at writing resumes, but when you actually talk to them, you realize that they may not be the right fit. And sometimes, like, the really good talents, they're just not good at writing resumes. Yeah, and then I also noticed that sometimes, because the job market is like the market is hungry for experienced talent, and that's why your hiring manager might actually switch jobs just in 6 months. So I found that people don't have the patience like before to develop a new hire. They just want to look for people who can just get the work done, and that's why they're focusing on experience. And whoever who can show more practical experience, whether it's through portfolio or some past work experience in analytics field, will stand out, because it's just lower risk from hiring managers' perspective, and because the cost of interviewing people and telling who is better is also very high, very high. Unlike, big tech companies, because for big tech, if you would like to work at Facebook, as a data scientist, data engineer, machine learning engineer, or even data analyst, or software engineer, the procedure is pretty standard. It's the same procedure, and they have to do lead code for most of the time. So their HR is very experienced, the internal recruiters, but it's very different in a bank. They're hiring all kinds of different people, and data science is just one of them. So a lot of times the HR is not experienced enough to tell who is a stronger data scientist. And that's why all the recruiters and HR they focus on finding people who are just can show a little bit more experience. That's just my experience after dealing with so many students looking for jobs or dealing with hiring companies. But yeah, my answer to your question is I do think that you have your strength, but finding the right way to showcase that strong experience, it takes some work, and it's a combination of many different things, like the portfolio project and the way you structure your resume is also very important. Yeah, but I think you should definitely have the confidence. Because you do have like very awesome background.
Thank you.
No problem. So I'm just going through some of, feel free to ask questions directly. I'm just going through some of the comments here. Ken is saying ChatGPT code interpreter plugin killed the data analyst career. I think this is an interesting comment. I agree with partially. I think ChatGPT is going to take away some of the junior level jobs. And it probably impacts, the creative writing industry as well. We also noticed that internally, for example, our marketing and sales team, they start to use ChatGPT to help them improve their, whatever writing language or just getting ideas. But ultimately, I think you can't just rely on ChatGPT because it's just a large language model. It's predicting the next word. It's doing a fantastic job, but it's not always going to work. So you still need to have, that strong foundation. Like, if you ask someone who's not coming from a creative writing background to work with ChatGPT, then all they can do is just rely on it. Then that is a problem, right? So you still need people who are experienced. So it's going to actually help people who are experienced to become much more efficient. Because in the past, even when I was writing code, sometimes I just forget something, and then I'll just Google because it's fast, and I'll just find some template, sample code. I'll just tweak it, and when I run into error messages, I just Google. But ChatGPT can help you save time in this case, and it does a pretty decent job. So that just takes away my Google, the time I spend on Googling stuff. But either way, I'm not going to write the 10 lines of code because I know I can get it from Google. And now I'm just using ChatGPT for that. But that is not why let's say I'm a senior data scientist. That's, I work as a data scientist because I also understand the business. And also ChatGPT is not trained on, let's say, if you work in the banking industry, it's not trained on banking customer data. So it's never going to beat the data scientist who's actually building those models. So it will contribute ideas and values when it comes to writing some standard code, but really that's not the value of a data scientist. And but it's going to make a data analyst and data scientist job very efficient. And also when it comes to data analytics, right, let's say Tableau or Power BI, we've worked with a lot of students, right? Sometimes some students can build like very fancy dashboard, but when you ask them why you structure your dashboard this way, they don't like, because they can't explain that very well, because the dashboard, when you look at it, it doesn't have very good business sense in it, because when you build a dashboard, there's a business goal, like what is the key business metrics you would like to use? How do you want to structure this dashboard so the end users can understand the business problems or whatever quickly, right? That's what's important for a data analyst or business analyst. It's not the skills just to write some code and display some numbers, bar chart on a dashboard. That could and should be automated. So I think people who's interpreting these, that skill is still way more important. I just don't think that GPT technology can help you do that. But like the junior level jobs, I do think there's an impact on that. But companies always hire junior data scientists and junior data analysts. If you think that if ChatGPT is like the junior data analyst, then why would companies still hire a lot of senior data analysts and senior data scientists, right? So in that sense, I don't think it's gonna take away those jobs.
So if you have someone that graduate with a bachelor's in data science and the junior developer, or rather the junior data scientist positions are pretty much dead, how can they get in?
I don't think the junior data scientist jobs are dead.
Do you think it'll be dead in a couple of years? Like with the progression that we're making? Like we're 6 months in. The world has been flipped upside down. I don't know how many times. Like how long, seriously, how long, like the software engineers, the data engineers, pretty much anything that's tech related, how long, the juniors that just graduated college, how long do they have? It's not looking good.
Okay, so I think this is up for debate, right? But I think if you actually, have worked as a data scientist in the industry, you know that when you work as a data scientist or data analyst, the coding part is always the easy part. It's not the most important part. So what I think ChatGPT is replacing is just removing some of the need to write code. But really, that's not data science. Data science is about when ChatGPT help you create a plot, who's going to interpret that, right? Are you expecting ChatGPT to tell you if it's a good chat or not? I don't think it's there. Even after 6 months, like 2 years, I don't think it's gonna be able to do that job. But maybe one day technology can do that. But
what was the example that you said? I'm sorry.
To predict that. So what I was saying is that, for example, ChatGPT can help you write some code to generate a plot, right? But how would you expect ChatGPT to understand the business problem and tell you if it's a good or bad chat? So a bad plot, right? So basically, I'm using ChatGPT to help me save time making plots, but still, you need data analysts to be able to interpret that.
There was a tool I was just looking at today. It's funny that you use this example. That a guy was talking about where you could put in like visual graphing data into this LLM, and it gives you a response, not using OpenAI's model. That's just look, I really do want to agree with you. I really do, but it's just that graphics designers and artists and writers, mathematicians, like nothing is off limits unless you have a trade that can't be touched by computers.
I think you have to understand that ChatGPT is trained on the data that's generated by us, right? So how powerful it is really depends on the kind of data you feed into it. So I think most of the businesses data is their proprietary, so it's the data about their own customers. It's almost impossible for a company to say, hey, ChatGPT, here you go, this is my business data, and then analyze it, because that would be very hard. Like, think about it, like when we work on projects for the business, a lot of time is back and forth discussion about how to use these data. How would you feed, because these data are not collected. Like, the discussion was the business and why and how are you going to do something? How are you going to structure the data? That part there's no data generation and collection process there. And ChatGPT is trained on everything people said on the web. That's easy to collect. But I just think that in a business environment, this kind of data is either private or it's just not really being collected. So I don't think it's going to be able to replace a data scientist thought process. They're always like template code. Like there are a ton of template code or AutoML tools out there. It's been there when 14 years ago when I build machine learning models, they're already AutoML tools at that point. But those kind of tools never become the dominant tools. When by data scientists. So I think I guess I'm just a little bit more positive on this. I don't think it's going to really replace a data scientist or data analyst jobs. For example, I don't work in music, and I don't have a music background. So even if you give me those tools, I just don't think I will be able to I can use those tools to generate music, but I wouldn't be able to tell whether it's the best or whether that music is going to be a hit song or something like that. That's because I still don't have that industry knowledge or background.
Did you hear the AI generated Drake and the Weeknd song that's been getting millions of plays on Spotify?
Yeah. That's certainly interesting, but yeah, I guess we can keep debating this, but maybe I can continue my presentation.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't want to hog the mic or anything.
Yeah. Okay, cool. There are a lot of comments. We'll get back to this and continue, but thanks for all the great discussion and contribution. So let me finish my slide and we'll come back to this discussion because we have certainly more time left. So in terms of the job market, we collected some data, but I think it will be probably more straightforward just for me to show you what the job market look like. We can just go to Indeed and LinkedIn. So let's do a quick search. Okay, so let's say Indeed, we can search for data analyst jobs. There are right now 7,000 to 8,000 jobs, data analyst jobs in the United States. And if you search for data scientist, I think there are about 4,000 or something. And about, if you look at the jobs that are posted in the last 14 days, there are like 1,000. So that was pretty good actually, because every day there are a couple of hundred jobs posted. And I think in the last few years, we've been doing this kind of, ad hoc like research, on a regular basis. So I think, the demand is still definitely very strong. A lot of companies are yet to, start adopting data science. So there are definitely a lot of data scientist jobs out there. And LinkedIn will probably give you similar results. I think there are, 1,800 jobs posted last week. So I think nowadays there are more jobs posted on LinkedIn than Indeed. But just to give you, some up-to-date information regarding the number of jobs. And in terms of the skill set, this is some analysis done, like just simple keyword analysis done on a few hundred jobs we scraped from the job search website like Indeed, and you can see that for data scientist, the most in-demand skills are Python, SQL, R, Tableau, Spark, and AWS, and also deep learning, TensorFlow, PyTorch. So that tells you that if you're just getting started with data science, I think Python and SQL are still, the most important skills you need to have. Python mainly in the sense of, data preparation, machine learning, and SQL is more about data preparation and data extraction, because most of the time data live in a data warehouse. So you need to be able to comfortably write SQL to sort of, retrieve data from the database. R is usually, one of the top 3 skills you need to have. But interestingly, if you read the job descriptions, usually company mention like job descriptions will mention Python and R at the same time. So they will say that you need to know Python or R and they're frequently mentioned together, but definitely there are more Python jobs out there. Yeah, interestingly, Tableau got mentioned, and Spark, AWS are big data and cloud related tools. So these are some of the skills you need to, technical skills you need to learn if you would like to get into the data science, field. And we also did some analysis for data analysts, and you'll see, some interesting, difference here. SQL is still very important. The most important skill for data analysts, because even if when you're building a dashboard, you're still going to use SQL to write queries to prepare the data, right? And Python is starting to become more and more important for data analyst jobs as well. And then Tableau, Power BI definitely are some of the most important data analytics, skills you need to have. It could be BI jobs requiring Tableau, Power BI. It could be just a regular data analytics job. Also did some, analysis for the machine learning engineering jobs. So you'll see, deep learning definitely pops up, right? Because ML engineers a lot of times will need to deal with, language models, computer vision models, or deploying machine learning models. And SQL, Kubernetes. So when you start to look at the skill sets required for ML engineering and ML ops, you'll find more, requirement on like understanding infrastructure, such as Docker, Kubernetes, right? And TensorFlow, PyTorch are just deep learning related. Okay. These are skill set. There's some analysis done on the experience requirement. So you notice that about less than 60%, I mean 55% of the data scientist jobs, the experience requirement is less than 3 years. So that means there's still more junior level data scientist job demand out there. But you'll also see that 34% of the jobs require 5 years. Or usually companies will say 3+ or 5+ years, but not many people mention like 6 years. It's probably an outlier. For data analyst, there are more junior jobs, right? So over, I think, about 70% of the jobs are requiring less than 3 years of experience. And some jobs require 5 years experience. And interestingly, for machine learning engineers, as you can see, majority of them are requiring more than 3 years of experience. So that's a big difference between ML engineers and data science, because companies usually expect you to have some sort of data science analytics experience already, right, before they hire you as a machine learning engineer. A lot of machine learning engineers come from computer science and software development background, and a lot of them come from like data engineering and data science background. So you need to sort of have the prerequisite in order to become a machine learning engineer. So the requirement is definitely higher, but same as the salary, right? So ML engineers definitely have much higher average, base salary compared to other data jobs. Okay, we're actually working on something which is the data science job market report. It's a very comprehensive, job market analysis. We're aiming to publish that in May. So stay tuned. We will send that, notify everyone through email, or we'll post that on our Discord channel, or we may have a session just to go through that again. And there's some other information we'd like to share regarding, maybe ChatGPT will take some jobs, right? Things are getting more automated. And the job market is pretty tough right now. There are more senior jobs, so it's hard for people to get in, because it's also partly because it's just very competitive. So sometimes, I think before COVID, right, when companies post like a data science jobs, like as hiring managers, we know that usually like 150 and 200 people applying for the job. But during COVID, that number shot up to like 800. Like sometimes you'll just see like one job, 800 people applying for it, because we have hiring partners, and sometimes they'll ask us for a referral, and they'll say, okay, I got 800 people applying for this job. So without referral, it's a little bit harder to get in, or it's just like too many competitors. And sometimes job candidates tend to be very hard on themselves. They feel like, okay, maybe I'm not up to par, or I'm not as good, that's why I'm not getting noticed. I think it's because there are just a lot of data science programs out there. There are a lot of people who would like to get into data science. That makes it very competitive, and that's why having a little bit extra experience is really going to help you stand out. And we did some survey a while. This is a while back, but I think the pattern will basically be the same. So we did this during COVID. So a lot of people don't get interviews. Like 76% of people can get less than 1 interviews. But this, of course, includes some people who are not looking for jobs and they're event attendees, right? So we should probably remove that. But interestingly, like not a lot of people get more than 5 interviews, right? That tells you how competitive the market was, and probably is still. And when you ask more questions, people will say that biggest challenge, half of them say they don't have the right skills. These are probably folks who are just getting started. And most people will say that they don't have real experience. Some people don't have a strong portfolio. Some people get interviews, but they couldn't pass interviews. So these are some of the typical job search, challenges. And job search is a 2-step process. The first step is, how do you pass the screening, right? Use your resume and experience to get an interview. And the second step would be just how do you pass the interview? And it turns out that these are 2 different set of skills. Like being able to pass the interview, also requires some practice and experience. Yeah, in terms of the skills, I think we talked about it. There are definitely things you need to learn, right? If you want to stay on this, journey and just become a data scientist and later on become a machine learning engineer or AI software engineer, then there are definitely new tools and you need to learn, and new skills, such as MLOps, model deployment. It's just going to become more and more, in demand because a lot of companies will realize that, well, I want to work with this GPT technology. How do we apply that to our own business domain? Well, there are definitely a lot of companies and startups that are going to build these tools that allow you to apply your own data to this kind of, apply their technology to your own data. But trust me, a lot of companies will want to build in-house. So that's going to increase the demand for, for engineers who understand AI, or data scientists who can build applications. So I think you need to have some sort of mixed skills in the future. If all you can do is just work with Jupyter notebooks and write some pandas code to visualize data, I think those are data analytics jobs. It's not the future data scientist job. I think the future data scientist will need to understand data engineering a little bit, need to understand cloud, need to understand how things work in production. This is my 2 cents. I think that's going to be the trend, but the demand for that is still going to be very high because a lot of businesses want to do this. And in terms of the lack of experience, I think the only way is just to work on more projects and getting a little bit guidance on what type of projects to work on, because if you are graduating from a boot camp from college, I think your instructors and everyone's going to tell you need to build portfolio project, but the way you choose projects sometimes also matters, because some people go by how cool the project is, some people go by the industry and the business. It depends on, I guess the industry would like to get into. If you have strong interest in fintech or in financial services industry, maybe your portfolio project can be more more focused on that area. There are a ton of great resources and data sets you can find from Kaggle. There are people working on let's say banking data set or telecom churn. I've seen a ton of them, but when you look at the portfolio, the challenge is that it lacked a business sense. It's not a very complete project. It's more like just a new Jupyter notebook training several models, but it's still like the hiring manager, it's hard for them to tell how well you can work with them on a real project, because that requires communication, or how fast you can do research, how fast you can learn the business rules. and unfortunately, that's something that's a little bit harder to showcase. And that's why also employers would like to hire people who sort of have proven themselves in previous jobs. That's definitely a dilemma. But my recommendation would definitely be, you can go to YouTube and watch some of the, I think we have a session on how to build portfolio project. So we shared some insight on that. I would definitely suggest going by like business domain. If you are interested in certain domain. So I think in your portfolio projects, you need to have projects from different domains, so that when you apply for jobs in financial services industry, you can have 2 projects related to that. It doesn't all have to be like classification models, but it can have like, you know, just diversify your portfolio. Maybe one project is related to sentiment analysis in, let's say, in insurance. And then you also have a classification model or some unsupervised learning, you know, models for that, you know, for that industry. Having a blog post that goes with your portfolio project is definitely going to help. Or if you don't have time to sort of, you know, write and maintain your Medium blog post or your WordPress blog, then even writing a pretty comprehensive report like the project summary report will be very helpful. And here's one example. I think a student did a web application that involves some sort of machine learning, and he put he built something that's a little bit end to end, right? So he's collecting all the data himself. He deployed infrastructure, even deployed the models in AWS, right? And he leveraged different kind of databases, and machine learning is just part of the the pipeline. So it's a very complete project, and I think he has 2 to 3 projects like this, and the student got a lot of interviews, and he's a new grad, and we referred the student to a telecommunication company, and they told me that they want someone who has more than 5 years of experience, but the student still made it to the last round. And unfortunately didn't get the job because he was interviewed by 2 directors who think that he actually couldn't communicate at a very high level. And they're the main, stakeholders for this job. So unfortunately, he didn't get a job, but his technical skills definitely impressed them. See if you can find a mentor or someone who can give you suggestions on how to write, a powerful, portfolio project will be very helpful, and try your best to get access to some real project experience. I would like to plug WeCloudData here because we have a program which is called the Real Client Project program. It's part of our data science bootcamp, so all the students will have access to that. But if you already have the data science skills and you just couldn't get interviews, instead of just providing some sort of mentorship service, we also included, opportunity to work on real client project for 6 months. So you'll be basically working as a consultant with us on different kind of real project experience projects, and then you can add that to your resume, and that works, far better than portfolio project, right? So there are different kind of projects, but real project will definitely help you more. And if you're interested, you can go to our website to find more information about it, or just contact us. All right. Lastly, I just want to give some suggestions. I think switching career to data science is not as easy as 3-4 years ago. 2021 was a really good year because I think after COVID, the job market sort of all of a sudden start to have a lot of demand, and all the tech companies are hiring like crazy. So they almost like double, triple their size. And that's why last year, a lot of layoffs, and they're really just cutting the people that they hired excessively. Doing your research is very important. I found that during tough time, I think networking becomes even more important. When you compete against like 400 or 500 people, sometimes it's not because you're not good or your experience doesn't stand out. It's just like, I remember some company was asking for, like this company called a firm they asked for some referral. They posted the job, and like in the morning they got already more than like 70, 80 applicants, and their HR is like, okay, let's just pause it. And I think we have enough resumes, because they just don't want to go through all of those resumes, even though they work with some automated tools. And sometimes like the timing of your job application also matters, because if the job has been around for 1 month, you're probably not going to get a good chance. So you have to sort of apply for jobs diligently, and don't get discouraged easily. I think if you persist, you'll definitely, get the job you want. And if you're just starting out, it's important to follow a structured learning, curriculum. And if you're interested in boot camps, maybe just try it out for a day. Most of the boot camps has, free trials, or you can watch some of the recordings. Networking and working with a mentor, I think, is also very important, especially when you go through interview process. Once you get interview, because the job market is already very tough. And let's say, with your experience and background, you could easily get 10 interviews, 2 years ago, but now maybe only get 2. And you definitely want to nail those interviews. So having someone who can give you suggestions along the way will be very useful. And definitely, apply whatever you learned in school, in online courses, in the boot camps. Apply those to hands-on projects. Kaggle is still very good data sources. And the challenge with Kaggle is that, most of the problems have a lot of people who work on that already. I think it'll be great if you can have some projects in your portfolio, right? That's your original idea, and you collected data yourself. We usually recommend students to do web scraping to collect the data themselves and then work on the project. So it adds, data ingestion to their experience as well. That'll be very useful as well. So at least, because I think if you don't have the real project experience or work experience in data, and then you got an interview, and they're definitely going to ask you, why did you pick that project, and why did you work on that project? So if it's your original idea, and that, I think that will impress people. And of course, it's just going to take more effort, because you have to spend more time thinking about how to, what kind of data you would like to collect, how to structure the problem. But I think it will be worth it. And build a strong portfolio, and keep applying for jobs. Sometimes students will say, they got discouraged, and they couldn't get a lot of interviews. But when we asked them how many jobs they applied for, they said they applied for like 30 jobs. I think in today's job market, because it's 3-4 times more competitive than the past, I think you need to apply for at least 2 to 3 times more jobs than before. So I think recently I was talking to a student in our BI program. A student applied for 150 jobs and got 6 interviews. That was actually really good. In the past, you may not think that it's a very good success rate in terms of landing interviews, but 150 jobs applied, 6 interviews, that is actually very impressive in today's job market. When the market is tough, that's actually pretty good. And definitely tailor your resumes. And you should always have multiple versions of the resume. If you are a data science graduate, right, or someone who wants to become data scientist, I think you should consider applying for data analyst jobs as well. And when you work as a data analyst in the industry, the request you're going to get, it's always time sensitive, because there are a lot of ad hoc requests from the business. In their business, questions are always going to be different. So that part, I think, is a little bit harder to be automated. So just keep in mind that when you're building your resume, if you have a lot of data science projects, and then you also are open to data analyst jobs, try to remove a lot of machine learning stuff from your resume, because a lot of times you cannot get an interview because you're using a data scientist resume to apply for a data analyst job. So you overqualify for that. A lot of people don't realize that. So you need to have, that's why I think it will be great if you can have some Tableau or data visualization related, reporting related projects in your portfolio, and you use that to apply for data analytics, jobs as well. And it takes a lot of patience. And while you're waiting for interviews and job offers to happen, keep learning. If you have taken a lot of data science courses, I think it's time to start looking into some of data engineering courses online, machine learning engineering. Just keep improving your skills, and then I think you'll definitely be able to achieve your goal. That's it. This is my job market talk today, and I hope you find it useful. I still have some time for Q&As. I see there are a lot of comments, so I'll just move on to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. This looks like it's going to take me a while to go through these comments. Or yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to just ask directly, maybe. And I'm just going to go through some of these comments.
I have hello. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So, I alluded to this a little earlier, like a minute ago, but you're right, completely right. This job market is tough, and I would say I applied to about 300 positions at this point, and about 1% have converted to final round interviews, which is only 3. And out of all 3 of those final interviews, I did not receive an offer. And I just wanted to know, just based off of that information, what would you think the main reason was? Because when I tried reaching out to those companies for any feedback on my resume, my skills or experience, it just, they pretty much did not respond back. I am assuming that it is because the talent is just that competitive, but I could be wrong.
Which stage did you get to? Is it like how many rounds did you go through with those 3 companies?
I would, for each one of them, the interview process was a bit different. There was, for one of them, there was a coding challenge. Another one of them had a two of them actually had take-home assessments that I completed over the weekend. That met with the hiring managers for those positions, talked about the coding challenge and then the 2 take-home assessments, and I did well. And it was really good. And after that, the recruiter for all 3 of those positions, they were all different recruiters, but they pretty much scheduled the final round interviews. Some of them were a panel, others were just a interview with the vice president.
You made it to the final rounds?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So if you made it to the final rounds, then you're basically compared to maybe only 2 or 3 people, right, in those final rounds. That means like your skill and your background is definitely there. You're definitely strong candidates. But now, like, my question is, any feedback you got from them, or any feedback you got from the recruiter? Because it's important to figure out like the why. I get it. Like, or do you feel like very positive, and then you were a little bit surprised that they didn't choose you?
Yes, I was. That's how I was actually taken aback, because I thought I did well. Right. But it is discouraging, because you think you did so well, and turns out the next day or 2 they come back with the rejection email.
Were you at a stage where you have to tell them like your salary expectation? I wonder if that could be one of the reasons, or you were not at that stage.
No, I was at. We're well past that stage. Usually, the way the interview structures work or have been working with me is, the phone screening is, or the first interview is when they ask about salary, and I tell them, I flip it to them and ask them what the salary range is for the position, and then depending on if it is around the range that I'm looking for, either tell them yes or no. For all 3 of them, they were within the salary range.
Okay. Okay. Did you try to contact them after the interview?
Yes, I did. I sent them an email the same day, and no response. It was like crickets from all three of them.
Okay. Were you
Which
able to? Yeah, I think it will be useful if you can reach out to them on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if they will respond, but maybe try to be a little bit more persistent. Like the goal is not to I don't think they'll hire you in this case, but just trying to get some feedback on why you're not selected, because it's interesting that all three companies you made it to the last round. Apparently there's nothing wrong with your interview skills, and yeah.
I mean, this was
Because,
uh,
I think the recruiters must know something, right, about this, because usually, yeah, because the recruiters arrange these interviews for you, so they definitely hear back from the companies why you're not hired. That's their
right.
job. Like, you should definitely talk to the recruiters and ask them, like 3 different recruiters, ask them why. Like, they must know. Even
I-
if you don't ask, the recruiters will ask. Like, I've worked with
Yeah.
a lot of recruiters and helped companies hire people. I know they will get feedback from the hiring managers for sure.
So you're saying if I already replied, let's say I did reply, which I mean I did, for all three of the positions, I emailed the recruiters and asked them for any sort of feedback they could give me, to perfect my resume, or my technical skills, or my communication skills, anything,
Yeah,
right?
just call them and ask, like, why you didn't get selected. Because I'm assuming the same recruiter will usually recommend 1 or 2 people. So they will definitely have some inside scoop that they can share with you.
Okay, I mean it
So
doesn't
at this
hurt.
point, like, I
Yeah.
think I'm feeling positive. I think you'll still, if you keep applying, you'll get more interviews. You'll eventually get a job, like, soon. But it's important for you to know what's wrong. Is it the
Mhm.
salary, or is it, so that you can adjust that, in your next interview. Yeah, that's important. But if you can make it to the last round, I think everything sounds right with your interview skills and your background. Yeah.
Well, that's reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
I
we've
couldn't
seen
hurt to
this a
ask.
lot. We've seen this a lot. Like, student will come back to us that, oh, I didn't get the job again. Like, usually it's like they've gone through multiple interviews, sometimes 5, 6 interviews. And then notice that the student who persists, they just keep going, keep at it. And then, very soon they'll come back and say, oh, I get the job. Because you have that momentum. I know it's a little bit discouraging, but the fact that you have 3 companies interviewing you, you made it to the last round, I think everything's right. Maybe it's just like, maybe it's luck. I don't know. Yeah. So just keep, I think just keep trying.
Mhm.
You are in a way better position and spot than most other people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say, granted, this is for data analyst positions. It's not for data scientists, but nevertheless, yeah, just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your experience. I think this will be very helpful for everyone, in the audience as well. Thanks, Remy.
I have a question. Does it improve your chances to apply to the same company over and over?
People have different opinion on this. I usually encourage students to keep applying. And but some people will tell you that, if you got rejected, you're already in their database, then you're not going to have a chance. But I still ask people to keep trying. But you don't do that for every job you apply for. It's like the jobs you're interested in, because sometimes it's just your resume just like you didn't get noticed by people. They haven't read it, but maybe when they read it, they will like it. When I hire for other companies, like, they give me some sort of ATS tools, like it does all kinds of screening, but still I'm left with, like, hundreds of resumes I need to go through. There's like a Kanban board, and then I'll, constantly in touch with the hiring team and just giving them the feedback, because they want me to help them hire the first data scientist and data analyst. And to be honest, I don't do this as this is not my job. My job is not a recruiter, but when you go through like hundreds of resumes, at the very beginning, I'm okay. But after like, 10, 20 resumes, I notice myself like moving a lot faster and I just start to skip resumes. That's just how it is. So it's very possible that people didn't even get to see your resume. And so I usually recommend people do a little bit A/B testing, because nowadays you need to apply for many jobs, and it's worth trying different versions of your resume. And let's say 50 jobs, so 50, like one version apply for 50 or 100 jobs, and then you apply for 300 jobs with 3 different versions of the resumes. That may tell you, like, based on the response rate, that can tell you a little bit more about the resume. And because if you're not getting interviews, the problem is definitely with your resume and your experience. There's no secret here. It's just like your resume is not strong enough. And while you're testing these out, you notice the weaknesses, but at the meantime, you need to sort of just keep improving your skills and keep working on more projects, and spend some time on networking, because I think it will help you save time. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yeah, your presentation in the beginning was spot on. Everything that you mentioned is exactly what is needed in order to get into the field. Absolutely.
Thank
Nice
you.
job.
Thanks. So Kenneth said, I think DS skills are valuable even though the career may be dead in 10 years. I partially agree with you on this, actually, because I think eventually even the business users wanted to be very strong in data analytics skills. I think why there's a strong demand for data scientists is that a lot of the business users, they're not very technical. I think I keep saying this, like, even, a couple of years ago, I always tell people that I think in the near future, the operational level data scientist jobs will merge with the data analyst jobs, because these are just data analytics, and data science has been becoming more specialized anyways. So that's why it evolves into data engineering, machine learning engineering, ML research, ML ops, and just companies start to realize that they not only need data scientists who can analyze, visualize, and also build data and build predictive models in a notebook environment. They need people who can turn that into products, right? Because when I used to work as a data scientist, like working with Jupyter Notebook is good enough. And I even used SAS, right? Some of the more traditional tools. And the pure goal is just to analyze the data and give the feedback back to the business. So that will become data analytics in the future when the tools become more and more powerful and things get more automated, right? But at the meantime, after so many years, companies realize that, oh, I can not only use data science and predictive analytics for marketing analytics, building identify high risk customers or acquiring more customer. I can now actually build a chatbot and train and fine tune on my industry specific data, and then I can use that to improve the customer experience directly on my website. And that can even be even more effective than the traditional email marketing and social media marketing. So companies are starting to think about using AI to better the way they talk to their customers. That generates the demand for people who not only understand AI and data science, but also know how to build a chatbot or know how to deploy things into production, right? So I think data science is as a field is getting more specialized, and you need to find your specialty. Not everyone likes building machine learning models. We have students going through the boot camp, then they realize that they actually are more into data engineering because they like to build data pipelines. They don't really like machine learning and statistics. But we also have students who just told me, like, about a week ago, said that, well, I did some exercises on the traditional machine learning, random forest and stuff. He's not excited about that at all, but he's more into computer vision. So yeah, you need to find your specialty, and it needs to align with your interest, because obviously you need to work on a job that you actually like and enjoy. And I think the future generation will probably also basically need to learn how to work with these powerful AI tools. You might be writing less code, or maybe more, I don't know. But yeah. There's some other comments. is there a data science, analytics, or scientist community to create networking in Canada? Simon, I don't know where you found this event. And so we do run, pretty big data science, meetup. I think in North America, we have like 30,000 members. I think we have quite a few like meetups. If you're in Canada, you can join, you can search WeCloudData on Meetup and you'll always stay in touch with us. And we have a lot of, interesting workshops. And there's some conferences I would recommend you go to do some networking. I think specifically in Toronto, there's Toronto Machine Learning Summit. It's a conference that they do micro summit, and they also do yearly conference. It's very popular in Canada. It's a group of professionals who work in data science and machine learning. Go follow us on Meetup as well. Question from Aaron, generally speaking, which industries will be most affected by AI? I think AI is impacting like many industries. Like I think we discussed like creative writing, music, art. But again, my stance is that even if I can use AI to generate art, I just wouldn't be able to tell if it's a good art or bad art because I'm just not trained in that. I don't have that gene, basically. So you still need to be able to do creative writing and then harness, ChatGPT to help you do a much, more efficient and better job. So that means like when companies because in the past, you need to build a very expensive $1 million data science team, and then they will tell you that, okay, the model you need to build takes 6 months. We need to do data ingestion, collection, preparation, model training, blah, blah. And it takes like so much time. But now that window is shortened. Maybe you can get a model trained in 2 weeks, right? So that just increased the demand for the company to do more analytics and build more models, because they want to, once they see the benefit of it, they want to always do that, like do more. But most of the time it's the cost. They realize, okay, I can't afford so many data scientists. I have to wait. This model is going to take 3 months. But now they know that one data scientist can build a lot of models quickly. So it's just going to increase the demand. I don't think that's going to decrease, right? The demand for data scientists. It's just companies are now AI or database, decision making is going to be everywhere. That's just my take on this. Yeah. But I think data analytics coding is definitely going to be impacted. So data scientists and software engineers will need to learn how to work with these tools. How much of an impact? I don't know. It's hard for me to predict. I'm also curious. So hopefully we'll be able to tell in the near future. What are the best ways to showcase your data projects during the job interview process? Yeah, it's a commonly asked questions. I think the best way to showcase your data project, if you get the interview, you pass the screening, I think is to sort of understand, like, let's say you go for an interview in the insurance industry, and you need to do some research. Well, ideally your project is related to that industry, and then you need to do some research about the insurance industry. I always recommend students to do research about, like, the machine learning use cases or data science use cases in insurance, for example. And then you need to tie whatever projects you do to a business goal. So I think when you're scoping out your portfolio project, you need to ask yourself a question. Why am I working on this project? And if it's a business related data set, how can the business use my model? Like, just imagine that you're working on a real data set, and how are the business teams are going to use your model? That's a very important question to ask yourself, because once you get into that kind of habit of thinking about the data projects, I think your project will look a lot more business driven. And then write a project report or write a blog post. And before you go to the next round interview with the hiring manager, you usually get the contact information and reach out to them and tell them that, hey, here's my my project summary or my blog post. Sometimes they'll read it, but you can bring that to the interview as well. If it's on site, you can print that out. That will be useful because in an interview room, usually there are 2-3 people, and if you can bring a physical copy of the portfolio, while the hiring manager is asking you questions, 2 other people are just sitting around. They can flip through your portfolio, and you may impress people. I give you one example. Like we had a student that we referred to Scotiabank, and he had an interview with the director, and the director said, "Can I keep your portfolio?" And he's sort of like circulating that around in his team, and then someone told us and said, like he said that was a very impressive portfolio. And later on, that director did a talk in I think in a meetup, and people were asking him like how to stand out, and he said you need a portfolio, and he was telling that story. So that tells you how impressive that could be if you can actually bring a physical copy of your portfolio. But you need to structure that really nicely, because people always appreciate extra effort, right? In the past, like if you have a Kaggle project, and if other people don't have that, that's your advantage. But now everyone has Kaggle, a bunch of Kaggle projects on their portfolio. You need something extra you can show people, like blog post. It could be something that's nicely presented. All of those will help. Question from John. Do you think data engineers are more in
Excuse me.
demand? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that was my question. This is Chris. So I just wanted to jump in real quick. Thanks for answering the question. And it turns out that I want to focus on financial services. So I'm studying the industry as well as studying data analytics. I guess my concern, and that slide you put up was really good, probably about 15 minutes ago, about how to do the little write-up. So I think that's something I can, do immediately. I guess my only concern was because the job market is so tough right now, would I be pigeonholing myself by only focusing on financial services projects, or is that the right thing to do right now, knowing that that's my genuine interest?
Yeah. We've worked with students who just like they're very specific about the industry. They'd rather wait. So they would not consider other industries, but I generally would recommend, because data science skills are very transferable. And companies like, even banks, when they hire data scientists, they don't require the data scientist to have worked in the bank before. That's not a hard requirement. So that means as long as you have the skills, and you can apply it, like you can learn the business rules really quickly, and then you'll be fine. So I think I would recommend you, look outside of the financial services industry. There might be other opportunities. Definitely, I agree. Like, don't limit yourself only to the financial services industry. There are a lot of hiring freezes going on right now in the banks. Right, you either have to wait longer because it's just going to make it more competitive. But there are a lot of traditional businesses like transportation, supply chain, retail. They hire a lot of data scientists, so you should consider that as well.
Okay. And I had another thought too, that even though if I don't limit myself to financial services, I was thinking, well, what kind of business doesn't have a financial team? So maybe it's not that I'm, limiting myself. Maybe I'm just using that as a specialization for my project, and I can still apply for companies outside the industry and just use that as, my knowledge base.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the people doing HR analytics, then you can pretty much work in every industry. So we have students who are very interested in HR analytics, yeah. Cool. John's question: do you think data engineers are more in demand than data scientists? Sometimes when you search on LinkedIn, you'll find more data engineer jobs than data scientists. I think this data engineering is also a new trend. That's because a lot of companies realize that as they start to deploy more machine learning solutions, usually what make your data in the machine learning models, good and solid is because you have a strong data engineering capability. So you can have really good data quality control that requires automation. You can't do things manually. So you need to you build data pipelines and automate the workflow. That requires a lot of data engineers. And also companies are, building more applications. That means there are more data sources they need to ingest. So there always need for data engineers to help them automate data pipelines, build data lakes, and a lot of companies looking into real-time, near real-time data processing and ingestion. That creates a lot of demand for data engineers. But it's very different from data science because for data engineers, the clients could be, the product team or the data science team or IT, right? And data scientists their stakeholders are more like the business teams. So I think it also depends on if you like the job. So we know that some students, when they go through the data science program, originally they thought that's a great career, and then they realize that they're actually not very passionate about data science, like machine learning. So some of them will start to focus on data analytics, and some of them will actually find data engineering very interesting. So I think if you're just thinking about getting into this industry, then do a little bit of research, maybe take some online data engineering courses and see if that's something you like. But if you're the type of, people who like to optimize things, and if you, for example, there's some queries that take, 20 hours to run, and then you can optimize the query and reduce the runtime from 20 hours down to 2 hours. And if you get excited about that, then you should definitely consider data engineering, because I think data engineering is a job that will make a lot of other people's jobs so much easier. They don't always get the credit, but they, when you're good at it, a lot of people, you'll become very popular because a lot of the business essential applications depend on not just data science. It's actually very solid data engineering and software engineering, especially when we start to build products. So it's not just ad hoc analysis, and things start to run in production. That means your data pipeline cannot fail. And data engineers sometimes will even need to work like a software engineer in that case. There's definitely strong demand in data engineering there right now, and it's also less competitive, I would say, compared to data science. But it all depends on what you're interested in. Thanks, HK, for helping out with the questions. Yeah, the software engineer. I don't think software engineers' jobs are going to be replaced, to be very honest. Building software systems are not easy. It's not just about the code. And the reason why a lot of companies will interview you for system design, unless software can one day do system design, then it will be super scary. I just don't think we're there. It's even hard for seasoned software engineers to make the best system. It's very hard, and you certainly don't have training data for that. So I don't think, without training data, AI is not that intelligent, and it's super cheap to scrape data, from the web and train ChatGPT. Well, it's very expensive, and it's I'm not want to discredit that, but compared to building software, I think a lot of people, software engineers, will do Stack Overflow. Now it just replaced that part. But building software, if you actually work in a software team, you know how hard it is. And a lot of times, the coding part is really the easy part. If ChatGPT is replacing that, it's not scary at all. Until one day ChatGPT can start to think, and do some sort of system design, but I just think it's not that easy because you don't have enough training data for that. I don't know, but that's just my take on that. Interesting comment from John. Time to wake up. Yeah, thanks for contributing your thought. And I think it is interesting, data scientists can generate a lot of values for the employers, but now if things can get automated, if it can actually indeed get automated, then companies will also downsize because they realize the benefit of automation. That's true. Yeah, I totally agree.
So with ChatGPT, my understanding of these generative, models is it's learning a lot of facts. So it's like it's like a kid or a student who memorizes a lot of facts, and
Yep.
then when you ask a question, it just regurgitates some related things at you. And initially you'll see when there are young students, they'll just do that without having a deeper intuitive understanding of it. And so your answers may look grammatically correct and make a proper sentence, but not necessarily maybe the right answer. So
Yes.
maybe ChatGPT can't become intuitive and mature for a long time. It will take much more for it to get there too. And so to have business acumen, intuition, long strategy, I think it will still need humans,
Yeah,
more
I agree.
experienced, sharp, smart humans for that.
Yeah, I think if you send kids to different kind of schools, they will learn different things, and it turns out to be they do have different capabilities. So I think ChatGPT like technology, there's some challenges there. For example, what if with ChatGPT it can generate information so much faster, and in 5 years 80% of all information generated are generated through ChatGPT technology, right? So it's not really generated by real human anymore. That contaminates the training data. It's a problem that worth research, and I think a lot of people are starting to research on that, because that's going to introduce a lot of bias, and eventually people are going to just talk in the same way. I just don't think that's going to happen. And there are definitely better technologies, like we just don't have that yet. So it's an active areas of research right now, because it's still just a machine learning model. It's very powerful. It's powerful because of the data you feed into this algorithm. But how do you make sure that the data you feed into this algorithm is less biased, right? And yeah, that's a tough, I think research area people need to tackle.
So this is all word-based, semantics-based. Do you think
Yeah.
it's going to develop into where it can also start solving math problems and start thinking logically? Is there a way are we at that stage where we can feed it logical and mathematical
Yeah,
data and then make it?
honestly, I don't think I'm experienced enough in AI to give you the right answer. So I'm just gonna say I'm not that qualified to answer this type of question. Yeah, but if you just want my 2 cents, and
Yeah, sure.
yeah, I can talk about it, but I just don't think I have very deep background in AI, so I don't think I'll be able to give you the best answer on this. Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if you introduce yourself. What is your name? We are just seeing WeCloudData here.
Oh, sorry. Here, this is my name. I'm the co-founders of WeCloudData, one of the co-founders. Yeah, I built a data science program myself. I worked in the industry for about 14, 15 years. I used to lead data science teams. I run a consultancy right now, so we're working with a lot of clients and companies. So we built data technologies basically. So I started my career as a data scientist, and then I found my interest in data engineering, machine learning engineering. So I sort of just kept learning myself and then apply whatever I learned to our programs. Yeah, and the reason why we do consultancy, it's a company called Beam Data. It's because we want our students to be able to work on real life projects. So our goal is not to run two companies. It's actually the consultancy we have is part of WeCloudData, so that our students in the boot camps get access to real life projects, and we take on those. I think it's a tough business that we're building because it's much easier for us just to run a school. But like when you want to give student real life data problems to work on, and also they can learn the businesses and how to interact with people, and a lot of companies are not willing to give their very private and sensitive data, and that's why we need a consulting company to, and we need to have the capability to actually deliver projects for people. So it took us years to start working on smaller projects, and then over time we sort of start to get better and better, and then we have professional project managers who are very technical, who can lead the projects to deliver solutions for clients, and then our students are able to benefit from that by joining projects for a couple of months, and then they can add the real experience. That sort of helps them. So that's what we do. Yeah.
Okay. When I try to learn, data science, sometimes I do things on my own. One thing with coding is when I get an error, and most errors look the same to me. It's always a type error, no matter what. Is there a good resource to kind of look and identify, and then you go to Google or Stack Overflow and try to type the relevant things?
You can
and
even
see what-
ask ChatGPT now. We actually do that. So it's actually very smart, but it's because it's trained on massive amounts of data. So it's really, when it comes to predicting the next word, it does a really good job. But of course, it's not just the large language model. There's reinforcement learning involved, and they have people who label all of these, answers. So for every question you ask, it take into the previous conversation history, as well as providing, generating a list of potential answers, and there are actually human labelers behind the scene to tell ChatGPT which answer is favored by people, or which answer is a better answer, and then they sort of learn that over time. And that's why ChatGPT, the advantage of ChatGPT compared to Google and also the new Microsoft Bing that has some sort of GPT technology, is because it's already the most popular one, and every time you ask questions, you're contributing training data to ChatGPT. So if people get into that habit and they use less Google solution less, then it's just going to make ChatGPT even better. And it's very hard for companies to beat ChatGPT at this point, I think, unless you have even more innovative, solutions. I think I digressed. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Is there a proper way to prompt a ChatGPT for helping resolve an error?
Oh, Andrew N, if you are in data science, you must have taken one of his courses. He just launched a prompt engineering course. Definitely go check it out. Yeah. I also want to take that course. So yeah, prompt engineering is something you need to definitely learn as well, I think.
In the field of data engineering, could
Sorry,
you
back to your question. My only recommendation is that when you're learning coding, even if you can leverage ChatGPT, I think if you actually want to become an experienced data scientist or software engineer, you need to really get into the habit of just being able to Google yourself. Asking ChatGPT is fine, but you need to understand why you're getting those errors. That's actually the best way to learn coding, because once you understand like what's going on, what went wrong, and that's how you learn it. Like and it's just like kids will fail, they'll fall, and then they know it hurts, and then they start to learn how to walk properly. So when it comes to this, I think there's no shortcut. You have to actually grind through some of these, especially at the beginning of your learning journey, and it will just get better and better. Yeah.
Is there how much need is there of object-oriented programming in
Data
being
scientist, I would say if you work with Jupyter Notebook, so different stages, right? Depends on the stage you're at. If you're just doing ad hoc analysis, I don't think you need to write a lot of object-oriented code. You don't have to write a lot of classes, but definitely get comfortable with writing functions. In your portfolio project, I also would recommend try to modularize your code. That tells the difference between an experienced and inexperienced data scientist. And then when you move closer and closer to production, and definitely you need to get very comfortable with writing, data classes and, writing functions and modules. That's just required in production. But if you work as an operational level data scientist and you're mainly interacting with the business, you're answering their business questions and doing, ad hoc analysis, building predictive models, it is okay that you don't write a lot of, object-oriented code. But whenever you want to get more serious about it, put that in production, that's probably the right way to do it. If you train a deep learning models using PyTorch, it's still suggested that you go with, the functional API, which means you're still going to deal with classes and stuff. It's just more flexible compared to the sequential, APIs.
It is recommended many times that as far as portfolio project, sometimes people say, pick some topic that is of interest to you and make a project about it. I don't know if you have heard or advised that to someone. If you have, can you give some examples of such projects where someone might have done something purely out of their interest in that topic,
Okay.
and not one of the
Yeah.
regular
So
ones?
one example I can give is, one student did, it's not even a machine learning project. The student is into fishing, and then he did some web scraping. So he found a website, he scraped all the fishing, the lakes or whatever resorts he can find fishing spots. And then he did some really cool visualization, and he created like a very small tool to help people to just search for the fishing places. And I think it was the first project he did when he was in the boot camp. It's mainly using web scraping and Python. But interestingly, he I think it was two students working on a group project. So they both published that on Medium. You might still be able to find it. One student got reached out by a startup in San Francisco. And then they said, oh, interesting blog post. Would you like to have an interview with us? And another student, he got the job. I wouldn't say it's because of that, but in the last round of interview, he was interviewed by the vice president on the business side. So that's like the business stakeholder. So the data science team is going to work closely with them. So that VP turns out to be a fishing lover. So he loved the project. So I think that sort of contributed to that. But I think he got lucky. So yeah, but again, I think working on fun, interesting projects that's based on your original idea is always recommended, because as a hiring manager, after you've seen hundreds of resumes, they all look the same to you. And people are going to have very similar keywords. People are going to have very similar Kaggle projects. So you just need something different, to be honest. And during interviews, they will ask you why did you work on this project? Tell me about the motivation. And that's very commonly asked questions. So you need to tell people why you work on that. And if you happen to love UFC, you like fishing, just tell people about it, and people can tell your passion. Because every time you tell people that, oh, I'm a career switcher because I'm passionate about data science, I love it, but you just don't, people can't see the passion. You can't just tell them you're passionate about it. But if you follow the things you're interested in and you apply the data science skills on it, I think people will see the passion, especially when you talk about something that you're interested in. People can tell the different energy there. If it's just yet another Kaggle project, sometimes you just don't have that energy level because it's not something you're passionate about. I think that subtle difference, people can notice that, I think, even in your tones. So definitely work on your original ideas and even collecting your own data. I think someone mentioned, sorry, I forgot your name, but he got 3 interviews, right? And 2 take-home assignments. So it's very hard for companies to tell which candidate is better. The only way to tell is that they give you a real data problem and you have to work on that. And a lot of people fail because they couldn't do very well in those projects. So you have to work on a lot of practice so that when you actually get a take-home assignment, you'll be able to nail it.
Mhm. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And any other questions? Well, sorry, I don't think I have the time to go through all of these questions now. Yeah, I agree with HK. Well, the reason why ChatGPT can't write SQL queries, maybe one day it can, but at the superficial level, it can, say ChatGPT, can you, create a bar plot or whatever, map visualization based on this data. And people has asked this kind of questions a gazillion times on Stack Overflow. It's relatively easy for ChatGPT to tackle this kind of questions. And, as long as you understand actually know how to code, and then even if ChatGPT can't get it right 100%, you can still modify it. It's not always going to work, right? But think about like the banking industry. There are 5 banks. They use exactly the same cloud platform. They use exactly the same technology, the databases. But when you look at their tech documentation, the way they structure their databases, very different. They might be even working with the same tech providers, but because their business process is different, the way they structure their data is very different. So it's very hard for GPT technology to even get the right data to train on. So that part I think is going to take a long time. So to and even like senior data engineers are always finding these like challenging. So it's not going to be that easy. Good discussion. Thanks, guys. And yeah, I guess we're running out of time. So I won't, I'll stop here. And yeah, we have, I think, some other sessions. Again, I would highly recommend you join the 4 workshops on Monday, starting next Monday. Even though it's a vendor promoting their tools, but I think they're covering some very practical things like how to do time series analysis and how to store time series data in a database. I think they also talk about how to build applications using Flask. That was the last session. I think the 3rd one is anomaly detection. So I think you'll learn a lot from those sessions. And if you miss it, you'll definitely find that on YouTube. So yeah, follow us on YouTube and stay in touch. And I wish you all the best with your job search journey. And yeah, and follow us on LinkedIn as well. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.